Hello and welcome to MLOps Minutes. So in this video, the objective is that you're going to work on the project with us and on an IT project in general, whether internal to your company or open source in public, as is the case here. The idea is for you to be able to run and start the project as quickly as possible so that you can get on with your work. That's the aim of this video. We're going to work on GitHub. I'll put the address in the video comments. And we'll use the Git protocol to version the code. What happens is that there's one file that's very important on a project, and that's the README.md. In general, this is the one that is displayed by default on the tools. And in this README.md, there's a very important section called Getting Started. The idea is to get you up and running as quickly as possible after installing a few tools. And with as few lines of code as possible, you can start your project. So for this video, you'll need a version of Python. It doesn't matter if you don't have exactly the right version of Python, but in the next few videos, it will be mandatory. You need to have Git installed on your computer and Docker desktop. The idea here is to execute these scripts, which are Linux bash. And here, as I'm on Windows and we didn't want to write two scripts, one for Linux and one for Windows, we're going to use git bash, which will be installed when you install Git. So here we go. So now I'm going to launch git bash. I zoom in a little, and that's it. So what's going to happen is that I'm going to put myself on my C hard disk, so it's C:, that I have to write to. And I've got a GitHub directory where I put all my computer projects. What I'm going to do is copy all the command lines and set them to run. Hop normally, it's so everything will run. Let me describe what's going on here. Here we start by running a git clone, so we retrieve the sources from the GitHub Git and repatriate them to our workstation. Next we'll go to the MLOps Python project directory. We'll give execution rights to this makefile. We'll go into a bit more detail later, but basically this makefile will instantiate local Python libraries and compile them. Next, we'll download a version of the model that has been generated in training and versioned. We'll unzip it into the appropriate directory to expose our API in production. And finally, we'll run a Docker images, one for our API, and the second one to run our front end, and our web front end will call our API. That's all there is to it. And the idea is to mask the complexity behind it. So there, I think the Dockers are in the process building themselves, and as a result, I think we're at the end. They must already be launched. So if I go to my localhost formula, I'll be able to pick up some files. But the idea is that in the source code, by default, in documentation, Postman, put a PDF example here. I'll definitely use it. Oh yes, it worked. I shouldn't have clicked again. You can see that the server is starting to work, but I made a mistake. I'll click on it again. We'll make another call. So you can see cats and dogs that appear. Here I only have cats and dogs. You can see that my API is working on the server side, and I can see the result. So there you have it, in just a few lines of code. Quite quickly, I was able to run the project on my workstation, and that's exactly what I'd like you to do. In the next video, we'll use Postman, which is a small client tool that simulates a client, to manually call our API.